Hi, this is R.N. Bhaskar from Bhaskar Ki Business Baatein, from BKBB, which is an acronym for Bhaskar Ki Business Baatein. This is a channel that comes to you every week with policy analysis, stories, and conversations. But at this time, at 8:15 in the morning, on weekdays, Monday to Friday, we bring to you news behind the news. And even though today is the end of the week, news never stops. And this time too, we have some very interesting bits of information for you. And with me are my two co-anchors, Katya. Welcome, Katya. And Anurag. Welcome, Anurag. It's good to have both of you here. And today we have three titles for you. See them on the screen. The first is about Amazon's faith in India and investing 2,000 crore this year itself. The second is India's love for keeping money overseas. Swiss bank holdings have gone up by 11%. What happened to PMLA? And the third one is on consumer middle class aspirations. The last one is a very interesting story of what the middle class focuses on. Let's take the first story first. Amazon wants to invest 2,000 crore rupees in India. Okay, it's another investment story. But just look at what it's investing money in. It's investing money in creating more fulfillment centers around India. It's spending that money to upgrade workplace and workforce facilities. Better surroundings so workforce can work easily, better facilities, including for the handicapped. And what is more interesting is they're creating resting facilities for truckers so that the truckers also get a place to rest. But behind this news is another thing. It means Amazon continues to repose enormous faith in India's retail market. The investments are large. Amazon is large, but it wants to grow larger. It's already the biggest player in India, and people have not been able to dislodge it. I don't think they will. And Amazon wants to consolidate its position in India. Look at the offerings, look at the basket and the spread of goods that they have. I mean, goods that I would have to seek around in the market because I wouldn't find it, I suddenly find it. And when you put in that much of money, expect a huge churn in the retail markets. Anyway, that's the way things go. Good, more power to the consumer. And let's see what happens. Let's go to the next story. And the next story is equally interesting. It's by Anurag.
Good morning. Indian money in Swiss bank has more than tripled in 2024, reaching to 3.5 billion Swiss francs or nearly 37 crore rupees, according to Switzerland's central bank. The surge is driven primarily by funds held through local branches and other financial institutions, while direct customer deposits from Indian clients rose by 11%, now accounting for just one-tenth of the total. Looking back, the sharp rise follows a dramatic 70% decline in Indian linked funds in Swiss banks in 2023, when holdings fell to a four-year low of around 11,000 crores rupees. The current figure is the highest since 2021, but still below the all-time peak of nearly 69,000 crore rupees back in 2006. It's important to note that these numbers reflect official figures reported by banks to the Swiss National Bank and do not indicate the amount of alleged black money. The data does not include funds held by Indians or NRIs in the names of entities based in third countries. Swiss authorities emphasize that these assets held by Indian residents in Switzerland cannot automatically be labeled as black money, and Switzerland has been sharing annual financial account data with Indian authorities since 2018 under an automatic exchange agreement. This development comes against the backdrop of India's ongoing effort to combat undisclosed foreign assets, including regular information sharing with Swiss authorities. As the number fluctuates and deposit rise in the Swiss banks, the question remains: does this renewed surge in Swiss bank holdings signal a shift in global financial strategies, or are we seeing a new pattern in cross-border money movement? What's your take on this, sir?
From India will continue going overseas, no matter how many draconian laws India brings in. We also believe that all these laws were used to harass opposition members rather than the ruling party members. There's also another thing it points to. The all-time high that was there came down because Switzerland entered into the full disclosure law. So many of the holdings got transferred to third world countries, and indirectly other institutions have started investing in Switzerland. So end beneficiary is not known to Switzerland too. The money stays in Swiss banks, but in other names. But even the names of individuals, and as Switzerland, as the Swiss banks rightly points out, they need not necessarily be black money because they're the names of Indians. It does point to one more thing, which is corroborated by India's outward FDI flows. Some of the FDI flows outside, going outwards, were actual investments. Some of them were used to park money overseas. And those who park money overseas have the advantage of a faster depreciating rupee, plus the interest they get. And of course, they escape from taxation. We do not think the Swiss bank will remain marginalized as was feared 20 years ago. In fact, it remains one of the strongest banking systems, and people still invest in third world countries but get the money back to Switzerland in other people through other entities. That is what works. And India, if you just look at the data which RBI itself provides, cash in circulation has increased faster than GDP growth. That itself tells you a story. Anyway, thank you, Anurag. Great story, lovely. And can we take the last one, which is very interesting, on middle class aspirations? Katya, can
From Swiss banks to lower middle class budgets. That's quite a push. So so there's a study done by Home Credit India. Interestingly, this concentrates on lower middle class homes, not up middle class as a whole, because middle class has a lot of variations in between, which is recognized. So what is interesting about how middle class people spend is, first obviously is groceries. A large chunk goes to groceries of their budgets. The next is not rent as expected. The next is surprisingly school children's education. That points to two things: how aspirational middle classes, they're spending for the future, they're spending for a better tomorrow, etc. And the number two thing is, it also points out how private education is getting really expensive. If it is taking away 19% of a middle class person's household budget, it's something that has to be taken note of. And then obviously comes the rent, etc. So now, how much do they make on an average? We can never generalize it. Your average income is 33,000 per month. Now we see a lot of LinkedIn posts these days saying 50 lakhs per annum is the new middle class, etc., etc. That is not true. Lower middle class story is completely different from what's seen in social media, because they are not well represented in actual media or even social media. And their savings is, interestingly, on an average is 13,000 per month. And how do they save? That is also pointed out. They do not save in instruments and FDs, etc., etc. They realize that 13,000 per month is not worth saving. So a lot of them prefer to hold it in cash for an emergency, for something else, or for an investment, or sometimes even for entertainment. They take small trips here and there. So this is a thing. And a lot of people, interestingly, number of people who are saving has come down. Earlier 60% said they would save money after their spends. Now only 50% say that they save, which points out that there is a lot of stress in the part of the economy which is not very, very well represented in even in the numbers or in the media. What do you think, sir?
you are right. The middle class, the biggest aspiration is education,
Right,
because education provides you an upward mobility path.
right,
What is interesting is, I would have thought number two would be medicine and healthcare.
Mm.
That has not happened. But that could be because many clinics, both by government as well as trusts, have come up which offer very affordable healthcare to people. Just in my house, there is a little trust, it's a Nirankari trust, which offers blood tests at less than 25 rupees. It offers x-rays at 25 rupees. And that is why you suddenly find that healthcare possibly for the lower middle class is through these trusts. Because in government hospitals, they cannot wait the whole day in queues. The fact that education still people spend privately points to just one factor, that the collapse of the public education that the government is supposed to provide is so pathetic. The middle class prefers to spend its money on education because they don't trust government schools. As our data shown us, almost 80% of the private school of the public school, government schools don't have internet. 50% don't have laboratories. And that is why that indicator of number one for education is both good and a pointer to the lack of governance. Thank you, Katya.
The fact that 33,000 person who's earning 33,000 per month is spending on private education shows how backward, and then there's a lot of disinterested teachers also in the public
Yes,
education system which we have not fixed. So it's actually a distressing point, sir, very distressing
very
point.
distressing. And if you really want to improve education, have outcome measurement of teachers.
Right.
The government doesn't want to do that. It'll expose the government.
True. Very true.
Anyway, thank you very much. And yes, we are going to take some questions. And the first question has already come in. And given by not instituting a strong policy of funds to tax havens like Swiss, the Swiss banks or Cayman Islands or whatever, is the government allowing the economy to be stabilized, to be destabilized? The government's approach to money has not been the most sensible approach. They put restrictions on gold, and whenever put restrictions on something that every Indian desires, especially in the face of a collapsing currency, you'll have people buying smuggled gold. And even now, we wanted the duty rates to be lowered below 5% because any duty rate above 5% makes smuggling profitable. So the rich man sends his money out. The middle class man, wherever he can, he buys gold from wherever he can and he puts it in his house. Confidence in the rupee is plummeting, at least among those who have the money. And that's a very serious thing. Anyway, let's take the second question. The second question is of Katya again. Can the middle class reduce its expenditure on education and still get the desired results?
I do not think so. Not with the current, public education system. If you look at any public school, only people who are migrant laborers and laborers' children go there anymore. Lower middle class people, even if they are compromising on rent, actually, they're compromising on good home for their education, which
Very
means
true.
there are many issues involved. Which means RTI is also not working properly. RTI is supposed to help these people. RTI is also not providing the support that is required to these people. And public education system, like sir said, has broken down. Disinterested teachers, lack of toilets, basically broken down buildings. Very few people have it. And like I said, and then they pass them just to keep students in the school. They just pass them for free until 10th standard in most state government schools. So that is also another way of masking the lack of literacy. And our
Very
literacy
true.
outcomes have spoken about it as well. So
Very,
I
very
don't
true.
think they can compromise on the education.
In fact, the only place where I saw a change in education was when the Aam Aadmi Party changed the
Right.
way schooling worked in Delhi, and I know of my friends whose mates have taken the children out from private schools and put them back again in government schools.
Government.
That was the
And that
only
is a great expense saved for a lot of middle class and lower middle class families.
And the reason why art became popular was because of schooling and the Mohalla clinics. You're right. Education is important. The government's abdicated responsibility. And that, in a way, brings me to the end of today's session. We exceeded our timing a little bit. But thank you for being with us. It's lovely to hear, to know that you're watching us. Our numbers are growing, but make these numbers grow by telling your friends about us. And yes, subscribe, click the like button, they help us. And finally, this is the end of this week. Have a lovely weekend. Enjoy yourself, relax, and I hope to see you once again on Monday morning. Take care.